So good morning, everyone. We have a little bit issue today, but don't worry, our guest does not have an issue. I'm going to switch to Portuguese sometimes, Steffen. So, bom dia a todos, bem-vindos a mais uma palestra do Ciclo Internacional de Palestras, Conflito, Concorrência e Cooperação na Esfera Pública Digital. Today our subject is online scandals, and our guest is Professor Steffen Burkhardt. Steffen Burkhardt researches and teaches as professor. Did you get with the issue? Okay, let's try.
Yes, everything's okay.
Steffen Burkhardt researches and teaches as professor of media and culture theory, media research and literacy, and access the director of the Media Communication Program at Hamburg University of Applied Sciences. His research interests are scandalization and digital public spheres, political communication, journalism, and social media. Burkhardt holds a doctorate degree in social science from University of Hamburg. And he's also the author of the book Media Scandals on the Moralistic Explosive Force of Public Discourses. Steffen, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we just spoke about the Madonna concert in Rio, which went viral here everywhere in the world, but also in Germany. There are many Madonna fans, and there was this echo. So I think that echo vibe is very popular these days, and I hope you can deal with it. So if you hear me double, just get in the mood of that Madonna concert and you know you're at the right place. Thanks a lot for your kind invitation to speak at University of Brasilia about online scandals. Bob Woodward, the investigative journalist who teamed up with Carl Bernstein for the original news reporting on the Watergate scandal in 1972, once said about this icon scandal of the mass media age, quote, "Watergate is an immensely complicated scandal with a cast of characters as varied as a Tolstoy novel," end quote. I assume all of you who have read one of these thick Russian novels with more than 60 main characters have an idea of the complexity of scandals that Woodward describes. However, scandals have not always been that extensive. In my today's lecture, I would like to take you on a short trip to ancient Greece, where we meet the idea of the scandal for the first time in human history. You will learn about the core meaning of scandals for societies. Our journey will then lead you to the Christian communities in the first century that were scandal addicts before we jump to the French Revolution that will show the strong connection between scandals and the guillotine. Then you have all the knowledge to understand why online scandals are extremely important research topics in communication and media studies, sociology, history, and political science. After this little time travel through the centuries, we will explore today a new type of scandal that shapes our lives, cultures, and democracies in a most dangerous way, as I will argue later. When we discuss online scandals, their public narration, dynamics, and consequences. But let's start with an ancient Greek word first. This is the skandalon. The word skandalon originally describes the small wooden stick that was used in an animal trap as a trigger. You can see the skandalon here as a blue stick in my little technical trap illustration between the rat and the cheese icon. I don't know how cheese looked like in old Greece, but I guess you get the idea of the skandalon. When the animal touches this little blue stick, the skandalon triggers the pitfall and the animal gets trapped. You can see this. So the skandalon is that little stick. And what I find the most interesting about it is the fact that that more than 2,500 years ago in the ancient world, the skandalon is already not the trap itself. It's the trigger of the mechanism that leads to the trapping of the protagonist that gets in touch with it. So it's the trigger moment that initiates the process. Aristophanes was the first writer who describes that trapping of a human being as candle. He lived more than 400 years before Common Era in Athens, was a comic playwright known as the Prince of Ancient Comedy. In one of his plays, he describes a court scene in which the prosecutor uses his questions in order to push the accused in the direction of the skandalon. In this metaphoric meaning, Aristophanes shows his genius. The scandal is not the criminal offense of the accused. It's not the crime, not the misdoing. The scandal is in fact the publication technique used by the prosecutor in order to show the guilt of the accused. So the skandalon is a communication process that takes place in public and leads to judgment. And that already 400 years before our date. In the 1st century, the scandal concept gets adapted by the early Christian communities that make it to a core identity part of their moral code. Everything that leads away from the cross, from Jesus Christ, from God, becomes a scandal. Hence, the skandalon becomes a moral offense of high importance in all Christian writings. And with the distribution of these early Christian stories from generation to generation, over decades, over the centuries, the word scandal has been exported to the modern world. So it's an export classic of the early Christian communities who adopted that concept Aristophanes described. We jump now into the year 1789, the year of the French Revolution. For the genesis of modern scandals, this era is worth to look at. It's another milestone in the history of scandals and in understanding of the development of online scandals. We will look later at Donald Trump's online scandalization techniques and the storm of Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. You will always find scandals in the forefront of major political changes. However, in 1789, you can see for the first time in human history that modern press publication of scandal writings led to the execution of a whole political system and its aristocratic elites with the guillotine. In the forefront of the French Revolution, there have been many, many scandal writings about the royal elites, which the French called chroniques scandaleuses, scandal chronicles. These were papers that were distributed everywhere in France, and they permanently used that modern printing technique to distribute stories about the decadent behavior of these elites, the people there, the people above us. So this created a very aggressive atmosphere in France, combined, of course, with the real existing problems. Thus, the scandal concept, known from Christian culture, that marked an excess of evil, was transformed into a powerful moral concept and adapted by the media system. Everybody who was a threat to the moral values of the revolutionary fighters was killed. In order to identify elite groups that should be targeted, many of these scandal stories in the Chroniques scandaleuses have been published and distributed in advance. Hence, with the rise of innovative media technologies such as the establishment of the print universe. Scandals became an instrument of political power and a trigger for political movements and political killings. You know now 3 different types of scandals. Scandals that happen as communication process without media involvement, in which claimed moral transgressions triggers more public outrage. This is, for example, in the early Christian communities the case. The second type are scandals that are just reported by the media system. This can be, for instance, a report that covers a scandal that took place in another century or another state, but doesn't emotionalize the audience. And then the third type, which is the type we are going to focus on today. The third type are media scandals, which is more my area of expertise and research. These media scandals do not necessarily focus on failures of the media system. Media scandals are stories that are produced by the media system. They claim a moral transgression that triggers public outrage, such as the Chronique Scandaleuse in the French Revolution did. Media scandals follow the dynamics of the public sphere and shape the agenda setting and the moral framing of our societies. Therefore, they are a very dynamic field of research. Of special importance in scandal research is the analysis of professional message production in the media system, since that system, with its public interpretational sovereignty, is the most important producer of scandals since the 20th century. Mass media do not simply report on scandals that exist out of them. Instead, they produce them by framing social circumstances, events, or developments in a specific narrative way, which is labeled as a scandal. Without taking into account media-related message production, especially journalism, an appropriate consideration of how scandals and norm relate would not be conceivable anymore. In the early 20th century, scandals have been mainly addressed in theological studies. You will find here Lindblom and Stalin as sources. I show them in that PowerPoint, some milestone research papers in terms of the concept. So these were mainly religious studies because of the importance of the scandalon for the Christian communities. And with the rise of mass media production, scandals also became a topic in social, linguistic, cultural, legal, and economic research. John B. Thompson's insight that scandals only constitute themselves nowadays through forms of communication inherent to the mass media made scandals a central matter of media science and communication studies. In the 21st century, scandal research became a systematic and comparative study of scandals as a social ritual that serves the purpose of updating normative moral models in a society, and that, through communication, contributes to a collective difference and identity formation and identity management. Scandal research, therefore, analyzes the narrative structures, functional phases, and discursive practices of scandalization. It especially addresses the central function of scandals, namely to negotiate power structures in communities and societies. Scandal research is therefore always the research of power of discourse. Scandals are examined as constructs of mass media communication that can be defined separately from non-mediatized scandals. When localized scandals are being mediatized, for example, a German scandal like the Wirecard affair being covered in a Brazilian newspaper, it was not the media outlet that produced the scandal. The situation is different with scandals that provoke outrage as scandalous stories in the media. This differentiation is of key relevance for the connection between scandalization and societal upheaval. So the German Wirecard scandal doesn't bring, if Brazilian newspapers report about it, nobody is going to protest in Brazil about Wirecard in Germany. Media scandals, wherever, are communication processes included by mass media that trigger public outrage by means of a postulated violation of the general moral code or moral model of the social reference system. So it needs to take place within a system that the media system can postulate that violation of the moral code of the system itself. This violation can affect different areas of society, from politics, economics, culture, or sports. Media scandals are a distinct category of practical communication that uses a specific journalistic narrative pattern at the interplay of information and entertainment, it's both, to qualify and upgrade the symbolic order of social systems. Social networks have not yet established themselves as central narrative storytelling platforms. And here we come to the digitalization of the media system, but merely as powerful distribution channels for media scandals or scandal stories. When comparing scandals and media scandals, there are some significant differences that become apparent concerning the degree of publication, the modes of transmission, the time and space-related framing of the scandal narrative, the difference and identity management that was upgraded by that narrative, and the presence of images that were orchestrated by the scandalization. With the ongoing digitalization of every day, the media system's influence grew, and a new subtype of media scandals evolved, the online scandal. Online scandal, as a subtype of media scandals, are predominantly professionally produced in online publics and therefore follow a standardized communication pattern inherent to online media and digital communication networks. However, it's still journalism that adapts and boosts the online outrage to the society. This may change in the future if journalism will lose further relevance. But at the moment, it's like that. The central narrative strategy of the online scandal is therefore a professional storytelling product and differs from the narrative styles of everyday communication. Let's look to the birth of the online scandal. Online scandals popped up in communication history when the agenda-setting power from newspaper publishers shifted to the internet with the Clinton-Lewinsky affair of US President Bill Clinton in 1998. For the first time in the mass media history of scandals, the classic gatekeepers in the major news companies lost their sovereignty over scandal. US magazine Newsweek had been researching the affair of Bill Clinton for almost a year, but there were still doubts about the credibility of the sources. So good old journalism, yeah? The editors decided to withhold the story about Clinton's sexual relationship with intern Monica Lewinsky from November 1995 to March 1997, so quite a long time. That all changed on January 17, 1998, when the Drudge Report's website broke the news that Newsweek had information about an inappropriate relationship between a White House intern and the president, but withheld the publication. After Drudge Report was published, Newsweek released the story and the scandal ensued. Because of the sex affair and an alleged false statement, Clinton had to testify before the team of special counsel Kenneth Starr in August 1998 Although the hearing was held behind closed doors, a video recording was released to the public in September, broadcasted on television worldwide, and circulated on the internet. So this is the first online scandal. The scandal culminated in the impeachment of Bill Clinton. The Drudge Report, founded by Matt Drudge in 1995, was no longer able to surpass its global Lewinsky scoop, but paved, with lots of fake news, the way for a new online scandal sector that no longer followed the ethical standards of professional journalism and changed politics with fabricated outrage. Side fact, it has been copied many times, amongst others by Andrew Breitbart, who was Drudge's first assistant. From 2007 onwards, Breitbart ran his website Breitbart News and helped Donald Trump into the White House in 2016 using scandalization techniques. The Lewinsky affair thus anticipated a development that would shape scandals in the offline and online network international public sphere of the 21st century. Anyone with internet access, anyone can plant a political scandal in the global village, and it will be difficult for those who are subject of the scandal to erase the allegations from collective memory. The online scandal connects different levels of personal topics and mass media public spheres, both online and offline, linked through interpersonal, group-related, media, and nowadays also automated, meaning human-machine, machine-human, or machine-machine communication. Think about bots that push and spread scandals. This is machine-to-machine interaction. These spheres, as of yet, only have second-tier influence of the central narrative strategies of mediatized scandals. The journalistic construction of the media scandal ensures that scandals can still fulfill their system-preserving functions in the network society, even in fully differentiated and highly complex social systems. The digitization of scandals on the internet put moral pressure on political communication in the 21st century in many ways. Above all, the rise of online scandals can be characterized by two developments. Firstly, the digital space became a source for political scandal topics in which all content can be assessed almost indefinitely in terms of time and location. And secondly, scandalizers became able to trigger viral outrage worldwide. Consequently, a rise in political scandals, such as the WikiLeaks scandals, was observed. The online media organization WikiLeaks, which was founded in 2006 by Julian Assange, has released documents that exposed serious violations of human rights and civil liberties by various governments. This is the potential of online scandals. In 2010, WikiLeaks caused one of the first classified document online scandals when it released secret footage of a 2007 Baghdad airstrike in which Iraqi Reuters journalists and several civilians were killed by a US helicopter crew. WikiLeaks became a release platform for other activists and whistleblowers such as Aaron Swartz, Edward Snowden, and Chelsea Manning in the NSA global surveillance and espionage affair since 2013. Online scandals follow, like all media scandals, a specific pattern that transforms the social protagonists into heroes or anti-heroes through storytelling. When you analyze online scandals, you will find a specific scandal cast that consists of three different groups within the social system: journalists, that report to their audiences moral transgressions with the attribute to protagonists. Through storytelling, a media narrative is produced which is labeled as a scandal. In this media narrative, journalists function as main narrators that are visible as the storytellers. The main protagonists are described as hero or anti-hero. And the audience is described as supporters of the hero or anti-hero by interviewing the audience reactions within the media system. So the audience becomes in the storytelling, in this transformation, something like the core in the old ancient comedies, where they support either the hero or anti-hero. When you analyze online scandals, you will find these three main groups of the storytellers, heroes and anti-heroes, who can be anti-protagonists and their supporters. This storytelling can be described in 5 functional phases. In 2006, I developed a model of the scandal watch when I did the first intense studies on media scandals in order to explain the life cycles of media scandals. And it's very interesting to see that online scandals have a stronger simultaneousness of these different phases. So somehow this model is simplified when we talk about scandals in different online public spheres that have different speed dynamics. There's a simultaneousness of different phases. However, I would like to share it with you in order to explain how media scandals generate emotional outrage and evolve over time. Online scandals start with a latency phase. In this first phase, the public sphere is in a normal emotional condition and learns about the key events of alleged moral transgression. In the second phase of the scandal, the upswing phase, these events are contextualized. Who are the main protagonists? What did they exactly do? Who supported them? And so on. In the following establishing phase, all relevant social stakeholders are represented in the public decision-making. Do they condemn the protagonists or absolve them from the alleged transgression? This third phase ends with a scandal climax, which can be a judgment in form of, for instance, a court decision or the resignation, or in public apology, or other social rituals with strong symbolic meaning. And it's very interesting if you do comparative research comparing scandals in terms of similar matters in different countries to analyze these social rituals for apologizing or gaining back your reputation. At this point of the climax, the emotional outrage of the public sphere reaches its maximum. The fourth phase, the downswing phase, marks the aftermath of the climax. The decision is evaluated, and it's a very, very important phase in terms of social justice and social peace, and can lead to a reassessment of the scandal. So journalists will ask, was the reporting right? There will be public figures who will lead to judgment about how the scandal climated. The final phase is the rehabilitation phase, in which the situation and emotions normalize and the protagonist can rebuild their social credibility and reputation. However, in the online public sphere, we can observe a rise of online scandals that do not lead any longer to a common point of view within societies. In fact, there is an increase of online scandals that polarize and cultivate a social divide. With the US presidential election of Donald J. Trump in 2016, both his permanent scandalization of political opponents and his self-scandalization became the hallmark of self-portrayal as a political underdog and a lawyer of the underclass. Trump's presidency was accompanied by constant outrage, propagandistic lies, and unparalleled moral transgression, including political influence by Russia. With the virulence of his scandals, Trump achieved maximized media exposure from his very first campaign, accompanied by aggressive social media posts in which he revealed his worldview to his supporters directly and without journalistic framing. At the same time, he put pressure on political journalists worldwide to follow him online and report on his agenda setting. The discourse power changed in favor of the president as a scandalizer in digital public spheres, and journalism continued to lose influence in political scandals. I point that out because under Trump, the rise of online scandal got a very new speed dynamic. So there was almost every day a try of online scandalization of political opponents. However, the possibility of global scandalization on the internet was not reserved for president only. The blasting force of scandalization in social media suddenly became visible in the wake of the Weinstein scandal. In this scandal, the anger of chauvinism, which was presented by Trump as socially acceptable again, exploded at first time in the United States. This initial Weinstein scandal led to a series of simultaneous national scandals around the globe that you all know and that were framed as Me Too and can be described as the first global online scandal. This first global online scandal started in October 2017 when the New York Times and the New Yorker accused the powerful US film producer Harvey Weinstein of decades of sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape against dozens of women in the film industry. After the film mogul denied all allegations, actress Alyssa Milano called on women via Twitter on 15th October 2017 to use the phrase Me Too to draw attention to the extent of sexual harassment and assault. More than 10,000 people replied directly to Milano's original tweet, including politicians from different countries. Under the hashtag #MeToo, the allegations became a persistent topic for several weeks and months in at least 85 countries. Alternative language variations of the hashtag have been used across the globe in non-English speaking countries, including France, Italy, Iran, Israel, Japan, Spain, Vietnam, and the People's Republic of China. The wave of worldwide Me Too allegations against numerous celebrities and politicians received special attention due to the global framing. This online scandal communication event was thus the first political scandal that was simultaneously adapted and updated by a global public in national languages in such a way that national sub-scandals of this global scandal emerged. The Weinstein scandal became a global online scandal wave with far-reaching consequences for politicians in many, many countries who were sometimes little known internationally before. For instance, in the UK, Defense Secretary Michael Fallon resigned after Fallon's cabinet colleague Andrea Leadsom complained to Prime Minister Theresa May that he had made lewd remarks. Welsh Minister Carl Sargent committed suicide days after being suspended for alleged sexual abuse. The European Parliament convened a session in the wake of the Me Too movement after allegations emerged against several members of Parliament, and at the European Union offices in Brussels. In the United States, 8 women made public allegations against former President George W. Bush of sexual harassing them at meetings. Several politicians reported on their experience of sexual abuse. Congressman John Conyers had to resign in the wake of Me Too after it became public that he had sexually harassed several female workers and used taxpayer money to settle harassment claims. Senator member Al Franken resigned from office after several women reported sexual harassment, including groping. On February 10th, 2022, the US Congress passed, in consequence of that events, legislation designed to ensure that anyone who is sexually harassed in the workplace has a legal remedy. And in the same year, the statute of limitations on sex offenses was lifted. This allowed American journalist E. Jean Carroll to file a civil suit against Donald J. Trump, alleging that he raped her at Bergdorf Goodman department store in New York in the 1990s. In 2023, the former president was sentenced to $5 million in damages in this sexual abuse and defamation trial, and in 2024, so this year February, E. Jean Carroll was awarded $83 million for defaming her in the years since she accused Trump of sexual assault. Online scandals have consequences, both in the social and in the symbolic sphere. In the symbolic sphere of our cultural memory, there is an update of the moral code. Online scandals, such as the Me Too scandals, have the power to show moral transgression. In the social sphere of the society, there are, on the one hand, individual consequences such as sanction and the damage or loss of symbolic, social, and economic capital. On the other hand, the social transformation process can follow. In the case of Me Too, we can observe informal social transformations such as changed awareness and behavior, and we can observe formal social transformation through new guidelines for misconduct at the workplace or change of laws. In a nutshell, to sum that up, on our journey to the milestones of scandals, we have seen that the genesis of scandals is closely linked to the possibilities of communication and the associated media publicity. Orally negotiated scandals in local communities of the ancient world became mediated scandals that take place under the conditions of the respective media system. While journalists acted as scandal gatekeepers in the 20th century and dominated the storytelling, in the 21st century, social media increasingly gained influence on online scandals worldwide. But the potential of online scandals has its dark sides. Non-transparent algorithms spread polarizing online scandals in the social media sphere faster and exacerbated their political escalation. The merging of truth and fiction is attacking journalistic research as the basis for social self-observation and self-description in parts of the population. The January 6th United States Capitol attack is similar to the French Revolution, an indirect result of permanent scandal storytelling and emotional outrage of crowds that obtained, in the case of Washington, D.C., information more or less exclusively from alternative news or social media posts. This development offers a foretaste of post-truth scandals in which deepfakes and other AI applications are used to stimulate political events and movements in global contexts. Networked societies encounter different practices of the sayable and the unsayable and form moral collectives in such different cultures as high-tech autocracies with censored media systems, on the one hand, democracies with diverse worldviews, and nomadic tribal societies that receive the same communication content via mobile data transmission. Hence, online scandals are not only particularly suitable for depicting the cross-border entanglements of political discourses. They spread beyond national borders. More than ever, their analysis will be indispensable for drawing early conclusions about the normative design and regulation in online communication in a global context. Many thanks for your attention. I'm looking forward to our exchange and discussion, and I would also love to hear from you if there are any interesting online scandals recently happened in Brazil. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Steffen, for this very comprehensive presentation about online scandals. I'm still effectual.
Lots of echo.
It's a lot.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. Is this better now? No. Okay. I'll try to not speak too much. I just have to I'm going to switch to Portuguese now, just to sum up the presentation. Steffen falou que começou definindo escândalos. Nossa, o eco tá horrível, né? Bom, eu vou resumir em 3 frases só para não incomodar ainda mais com esse eco. Steffen falou sobre a definição de escândalos, que escândalos não são o crime em si, mas o processo de comunicação que é feito. Escândalos seguem padrões midiáticos, e mídia não só noticia ou cobre escândalos, mas ela também gera escândalos, constrói escândalos. E agora eu vou passar a palavra para a nossa debatedora. Our discussant today is Christiana Freitas, professor at the University of Brasilia. She was a postdoc researcher at the New York University, is founder and researcher of the National Institute of Science and Technology of Digital Democracy, and member of the advisory board of Open Knowledge Foundation Brazil. Christiana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your incredible presentation. I think it was, I made several questions, but you were answering all of them as you spoke. So it was really incredible. It's very fundamental for us to understand the importance of scandals and to understand scandals as a motor, as a force of political processes and systems and of political change. So I think you showed that very well with all the examples. So scandals in the forefront of political changes, right? In several political systems, in several countries. and it affects differently different cultures. But I think basically it was really clear for us to understand that scandals are really something important in the political transformation, in changing society. Well, now it's echoing there. Okay, it stopped. So I have a lot of questions, but I will start the debate here. I read an article of yours in the book Scandalogy, an interdisciplinary field, where you mentioned that instigators are able to spread their outrage via digital ways of communication in an exponential way. So digital communication changes mediatized scandalization, both with regard to the content of scandals and with regard to how scandals spread. So what we see is an uprising of mediatized scandals, and I will, of course, ask you some things related to digital democracy, to the digital sphere, and especially mediatized scandals. So I think that more scandals and more scandals being produced by media generates high impact and significant harm to political processes, right? And this is especially true when we think of scandals that are produced using fake news, using deep fake, as you put it now at the end of your presentation. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about your research and how do you deal with the conceptual difference between a scandal that comes from a true fact and scandals that come from fake news and deep fake. How are you dealing with that in your research? And do you find this conceptual difference? How can we approach that issue that I think it's really important? And deep fake has just begun, right? And it's already causing several impacts and political impacts and processes. So I would like to hear you about that for starters.
That's a
Can you hear me?
starter. Yes, I can hear you wonderfully.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Christiana. You put the most important and most interesting topic straight ahead on the table. So thank you very much. Yes, the new communication techniques in online communication created a storytelling universe in which that what has been framed as alternative facts, and I mean we know it's fake facts, it's false news, it's propagandistic lies, are professionally distributed in a way we can't cope with at the moment. So if you look back, it's very, very interesting that fake news and also kind of more primitive in terms of technology, deep fake of the media of their time has always been there. When you look at the printing in the medieval age and how printing technology was used to spread fake news, false news, and was instrumentalized by propaganda in order to damage the powerful of this time and to introduce political changes within societies. It has always been there, but at that time, the speed was much slower. So it took time to go from market to market to have your paper with the fake news and to tell the people the fake news there. And it gave the people who were there in presence the chance to stand up and to say, well, what you are saying is wrong. I have here the facts, and you are spreading false news. This was not a big problem. I mean, rumors have always been there, and also stories about conspiracy have always been there, and they have always been used for scandalization. If you think of the Pizzagate, now it's something we have had also centuries ago. in terms of abuse of children, eating children by the powerful, and so on, as stories that were used to scandalize the elites. What then happened is that at the beginning of the 20th century, a professional media system evolved, where standards evolved. It was not something that happened in the 19th century. It began only 100 years ago, that there were standards, that there were authors with names. So somebody had to say, you know, I'm the one who is presenting the news, and people could investigate if this is right or wrong, because we had the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers were the fourth estate, the fourth power, and they had therefore specific rights that were privileges of the media system. What happened now is that we had, with a wonderful idea to create an open communication system, an open communication world where everyone is equal, we created an ecosystem, an online media ecosystem, where at the beginning we had a very democratic approach. If you think of events like the Wall Street movement in the US, where people really gained power to fight injustice in systems, and we still have these cases, think of Me Too. Mm-hmm. But there is a growing community of people who receive news via TikTok, via Instagram, 10 years ago, Twitter 15 years ago, Facebook, as main storytellers in this digital ecosphere of online scandal production. And there are people who have a lot of money to use the automatized communication. That's why I put the automatized communication in this two pyramid model of communication. Yeah. And this automated communication with bots can distribute a story and misuse the algorithms in order to put them on the agenda. So the German philosopher Jürgen Habermas described once the refeudalization of the public sphere. It's that in the medieval times we had the royal court, and the royals and the aristocrats decided what's the topic of the day. And then this public sphere was taken by the citizens. It was taken by us. We could discuss politics. We could fight for our democracy. And now we shifted, and we have journalism as the main narrator in this, our citizen public sphere. And now this citizen public sphere shifted into an online ecosystem, and the with journalism at the beginning, and that's exactly what happened. Is happening now, yeah, for 10 years almost, with the rise of social networks. And now this public sphere can be manipulated, can be bought with money. So it's in that we have a court system again, where the aristocrats of capitalism, or the aristocrats of some countries, think of Russia, think of Iran, where you have powerful elites with a lot of money who have the capital to hire people who push these fake stories. And this is really a threat to democracy, because I can give you a German example. We have this new party, a relatively young party, Alternative für Deutschland, saying Alternative for Germany, which is a right-wing party, very racistic, very homophobic, traditional gender values. This party is permanently spreading false information on TikTok, and it's the most successful party on TikTok. And young people who spend like 5 hours a day on TikTok, which is, I think, the average time at the moment of young German spending time on TikTok, follow these stories, and the AfD became, in recent polls, the most popular party in this young generation. So I have no idea how we solve the problem, but I think what we can do as communication scientists is to use scandals and follow them and use the have to understand the scandalization techniques in order to compare what's going on in the world, because it's not happening only in Germany or France or US or Brazil. It's happening worldwide.
Yeah, that's incredible and very frightening. Because we really don't know what will happen, right? What are the impacts of this situation that we're living now? And I was even talking to my partner yesterday about that. Like we are having a very quite catastrophic situation here in the south. I don't know if you've seen, but the river had transbordou. I don't know that word in English. If someone knows. Yeah. So lots of people out of their houses and everything. And we observed that the government doesn't have a strategy to reach people online to explain scientifically what's happening. So when we talk to people in the streets, they say, no, that has nothing to do with climate change. And I myself, I entered in Google and tried to find where is the river Guaíba, what's its origin, and how, like government agencies need to be part of TikTok, needs to be part of the online sphere if we want to change minimally what's going on in the world, because we see the far right spreading and amplifying its effects. A lot of money involved, but there's also strategies that everyone needs to use it in order to navigate in the 21st century, and that's quite frightening. So I know you said that you don't have the solution, but I would like to hear you about scandals, because I work with digital democracy and democratic innovations. So we are now developing softwares to, NYU is doing that. I don't know if you know Beth Novak. She's a researcher there, and now she's the innovation chief officer of New Jersey. And we are trying to use the algorithms. We're trying to use generative. It's an echo. I thought someone was talking. We are using generative artificial intelligence to potentialize democratic processes like public consultation. So we are trying to develop a software that, like ChatGPT, to maximize the results of public consultation and so on and so forth. So if you could tell me a bit what's happening in Germany about that, how can algorithms and filter bubbles, for instance, influence the dissemination of scandals, and can we use these algorithms to help stop the harm caused by these fake news and deep fake? How do you see that? Is there a tendency in research about that? And people in the class there with Johnny and everyone, if you want to speak and to post a question, even written if you'd like, please do it so I can stop talking. Otherwise, I will keep on talking here. Very nice topic. It's very passionate. So please go on, Steffen.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that passion, and we share that passion. And I'm very thrilled about the project you mentioned. I think there are many researchers who are, and this is wonderful, who are joining together at the moment to follow very intelligently, and also with a new generation of scholars who is very fit in coding these processes. I went to you mentioned the Scandology book by Andre Haller and the Bamberg colleagues. And I went to that conference. They do it biannually 4 weeks ago. It was wonderful. There were so many smart, brilliant people who are now using big data analysis approach to see on a long term how different stories evolve, which topics are also used in order to attack politicians and so on. So this is very important. On the one hand, we need to, I think this doesn't help, whatever we do, it doesn't help from today to tomorrow. Yeah. So this is always the biggest problem. The biggest problem is time. But what we can do on the one hand is to monitor and to understand. Secondly, to inform the public and to inform also the decision makers in politics, in think tanks and in foundations and in journalism about the techniques that are used. Outcome of this is, for example, that the European Union has a new task force informing about fake news and attacking and propaganda attacking as online scandalization. It has its own website, so every citizen can go there and have a look and see how propaganda is used, and it's amazing. Just to give an example, maybe you have heard about that story that there were a cockroach plague, a cockroach disaster in Paris last year. It was everywhere in Europe on the main news. And people were afraid to go to Paris and and also this bed plugs. You say plugs, bedwanzen, bed plugs. So these little animals who bite you and you get infection all over the body. So this was a big story in the news, and we found out then later that story, there were some minor incidents, but that was a story spread by the Russians in order to attack French tourism. There is a story in Germany. We had a scandal of a woman who said she was a young Russian-German woman. She said she got, I think, raped. It was a rape story by some people who looked like foreigners, some migrants. So from that other migrants, not the Russian-German community. And the Russian-German community is a huge community and also important in terms of voting in Germany. And these people became, the whole media was very careful about the story because it was not clear if the story is true or not. But the fake media, so the alternative media, spread that story, and the party Alternative für Deutschland solidarized and said we must do something against these foreigners who come here and rape our women. And that story got so far that the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov issued an official statement blaming the German government not doing enough to protect the German-Russian community. The story was a complete fake news story. Yeah? So it was completely fake news. And you see that it is so important to document these stories and to tell the people that there are these fake stories around. However, we need to, there is a generation that might be lost to that because they are so much into that universe already and they don't believe. So it's like what you mentioned about climate change and the powerful climate change storytelling and the billions of dollars that are spent in PR campaigning to damage the research distribution on climate research and to damage people also personally, to destroy them who fight against fake news about climate change. So this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And there are many, many PR companies who are specialized in propaganda techniques and who will do everything in order to protect their clients and help them to make money. So it's a very strong competitor we are fighting with, and it's not by accident that the parties in Germany that are supporting the doubt on climate change are financed also by Russian investors. What we need, therefore, is a much better training in media competency, media literacy at schools, so that people understand at a very young age that they must not believe everything that is written, and that there is a difference between journalism and between a social media post. We are doing many initiatives for that in Germany. We are doing it together with foundations. We are doing it together with the ministries. This is something that might help for the future, but at the moment, there are people that seem to be ignorant to this kind of research publication.
Yeah. Great. Are there any questions there?
So thank you very much, Christian. I'm still with Yesho. I'd like to ask the students here if you have any question.
If there are no questions from the students, I have a question to the students. I really would like to hear from them if they have a favorite scandal. I have a favorite scandal, I will tell you later, but maybe you have a favorite scandal, and I would love to hear from you. What's your favorite scandal? It can be any scandal. It can be a sports scandal, it can be an entertainment scandal, it can be a political scandal. I would love to hear what's your favorite scandal and why you like that scandal. What makes that scandal to you interesting?
Come on,
that's a nice exercise. Is there
I'm currently scandalized here. Would you like to tell your scandal person? Okay, so I have a question then. While our students become more courageous, I'd like to know, you talked about media scandals, and I think it is very important to make the difference between digitized scandals and media scandals, because media scandals do not necessarily have an extra-mediatic dimension. And mediatized scandal in turn, or scandals outside the media, are not always treated as a scandal in the media. So there are some situations that should generate a scandal, but do not generate, not because they are not a kind of wrongdoing, but because they are seen by the media, or because they involve very important people, and then they are not treated as a scandal in the media, although they are a scandal. What kind of scandal would this be? Avoided scandals, or?
Yeah, thank you, Liriam. This is also a wonderful question. And it's an important one in terms of the divide within societies. There was a wonderful book by Ruth Wodak, the Austrian sociologist, called Der ausgebliebene Skandal, so the scandal that did not happen. And it's about anti-Semitism in Austria, because there is this narrative that Austria never had a problem with anti-Semitism. You know, the Germans invaded Austria, and were the German Nazis who did all the bad things, to sum it in a very easy way up. And Ruth Wodak followed this narrative and realized that the main media so the public media, the journalistic media, did not really cover that scandal and all the, or many anti-Semitic scandals. That means there are communities, and it doesn't matter whether they are online or offline in terms of the storytelling, that there are communities that perceive some facts or events or developments as scandals that are by others not perceived as scandal. And what's now interesting when we talk about the digital sphere is that we don't look at traditional communities any longer. So what's really new is that it's not any longer local communities, people who are connected, who know each other in the workplace or in the university or in a social activists group that perceive something as a scandal or not. It's now new moral collectives that are formed through digital public spheres, meaning people can build, can connect through emotional outrage a new community. So these are communities of hate. So this is your very interesting research, Liriam. That's why I really appreciate your work to focus on hate, what's going on with hate speech in the internet. So it's a trigger, scandals become a trigger for building hate collectives. And that's what's new. So what's not new is that there are some communities that perceive something as scandals and others do not. That has always been like that. If you look at historical scandals like the Dreyfus affair, that is my favorite scandal, and it's a big anti-Semitic scandal in France, end of the 19th century. There were people who were in favor of the Jewish guy and people who hated him because he was Jewish. So you always have that in scandal, that there's the one moral collective and the other moral collective fighting each other. But what's now new, and that makes it so dangerous in terms of fragmentation of society, is that the social cohesion, that the social glue of journalism and the journalistic audience, where you negotiate different points of view following a specific pattern of storytelling that is a professional pattern of storytelling, gets lost. And we have now communities that are communities that follow their own agendas, their own stories, and they get more and more fragmented and separated and segregated from their real life social communities. And that's totally new because it can be possible on a mass communication scale. When you had in old ages, we could write letters and find letter friends all over the world, but that was one-to-one communication. Or if you look at the romantics of the 18th century, where you wrote a letter and gave it to others, and the others read it and gave it to someone, it were small circles. Now it has the potential on Telegram and on other platforms to reach out to many, many people and to form small movements. And this is a problem for terrorism. This is a problem for anti-democratic movements. And this is a threat. This can become a threat easily to the society in general when it comes to spreading all the propaganda we are talking about.
Thank you very much, Steffen. We have two questions in the chat. The first one is about auto-generated scandals, especially by celebrities or artists to profit from scandals. Mm-hmm. I remember in a girl group that used swastika in the army just to provoke and to get media attention. What about this kind of scandal?
Yeah, it's very interesting. There is a woman who's a nun and works for the Vatican and doing the Vatican social media editing. And she's also a communication researcher and doing her PhD at the moment, especially about this auto-generated scandals or self-generated scandals, or we call it self-scandalization. It's a term Andre Haller, the colleague who published that scandology book, coined. And she spoke about that. I think it's a priest, wasn't it a priest, who used also kind of this rough symbols to self-scandalize and to generate publicity. This is a phenomenon that becomes very, very interesting when we talk about politics, because you have the motive of the clown. At the royal court, there were always clowns who gained influence through their attention. And sometimes you have these clowns like Donald Trump, or if you look to what's going on in Argentina at the moment, that use storytelling techniques of self-scandalizations to be in a way, to show in a way that they stand above the moral standards and they make their own moral rules. It's a kind of self-performance as an anti-hero that is against the established rules, the established moral guidelines, and against the establishment. So it helps to show the people, I'm one of you, I'm not one of them. So if you follow me, you fight against them. And that's the identity management that's in every scandal. It's always us against them. It's always the in-group and the out-group. And that's what Riemann described as the system and the system environment. There's the system moral code, and moral is the main code of social societies. So that's why the cross is so interesting, because it became the Christian communities couldn't have survived without that moral code. Their moral code was that a man who wants to sleep with a woman has to marry the woman. And that was new at that time. And that's why it became so popular, because it was a life security for a woman who got pregnant. So that's the women were the drivers of that kind of moral code, because they knew if I marry a man in the Christian community, this will help me that he can't go around the corner and cheat so easily. He has to stay with me and the baby. Very simplified. Yeah, but this is the idea of a moral code. Societies need a moral code, require a moral code. And the system environment is always the opposite moral code. And this is very interesting. For example, if you look on scandalization of homosexuality, if you go to Cuba, the scandal of homosexuality is that it's a decadent liberal lifestyle. If you have a look in the US in the 60s, yeah, it was homosexuality was the communist way of life, so nothing to do with the capitalist system. If you look nowadays in again the gender wars that are fought, you have the same scandalization technique, and it gets perverted when the others are used in order to justify misbehavior. If you think about Abu Ghraib, the Abu Ghraib torture scandals, the leading commentators in the US at that time said, this is a product of feminism. This is the generated female soldier who's torturing a man because she's a feminist. So you always will find in scandals the storytelling of us and the others, and that is what makes them so interesting. And you will see people will use a scandalization technique in order always to fight their enemies and the opponent moral oppositions in order to establish their way of thinking a society should be.
Thank you very much, Steffen. We have another question in the chat. How do you perceive the involvement of universities in mediating this conflict of information in data distribution?
In which distribution?
Data
distribution. I don't know if I got the question correctly. So the student is asking for the role of the universities in data distribution conflicts.
Yes, what role universities can play in mediating this conflict of information in data distribution?
In terms of scandal, the information and data about scandalization?
I guess it's in the context of misinformation and disinformation, which role universities can play on this context.
Okay, I think I got it now. Thank you. On the one hand, universities have to select topics that contribute to solving problems of the society. And for us in the communication and media studies, social sciences, political studies, it has always been important to focus on problems that matter. So this is a problem that matters. That's why I think it's very important that we focus on the analysis of the spread of fake news, false news, misinformation, propaganda in communication studies. I mean, there are other important topics as well, but for me, this is, in terms of democracy, one of the most relevant topics at the moment. On the other hand, so this is the research side. On the other hand, we are responsible not only to make information available to our fellow audiences, to our peers, but I think because we are, at least in Germany, paid by the taxpayer, own the public also reports in a way they can understand our research results. So what's going very interesting now in this context is that there are many, many attacks on researchers. We see them worldwide, that researchers who publish their results get sometimes attacks, they get threats, they get assaulted, and sometimes something very bad happens. And it creates an atmosphere of fear. We can see it in many countries where the system changed, like Turkey, for example, where the President Erdogan personally removed many, many excellent colleagues by putting them under terrorism laws. Excellent social scientists who had to flee, who are not able to be there. They came to the office and there were big signs on their doors that they are terrorists. These are things where we need to solidarize, and we need, as a scientific community, the change of information in order to create support for those who are under threat. So that's why it's very important to have international exchange like this, and I can also encourage every student there to go to other countries, have a look for fellowships, try to get in touch. And if you can't go, use formats like these online formats, which is a wonderful chance to get in touch with researchers and have questions about your country, about other countries. Look into the scandals that are happening in other places as well. It's so interesting when we talk, for example, about Me Too. there are countries where there's almost no research about Me Too, and Me Too hasn't happened. And for the researchers in those countries, it's very important to go to international conferences and to learn what can be done in order to publish information through other channels in order to strengthen the civil society worldwide.
Thank you very much, Steffen. We are running out of time. I'd like to thank you, Steffen, for accepting our invitation and for this brilliant presentation. I'd like to thank you, Christiana, for your comments, for your time, for accepting our invitation. So, to our students, we see each other next week with the subject tracing the far right online. And yes, I'm counting on you.
And I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity of being here. Your work is incredible, Steffen. Very nice to meet you. And I hope we can meet in Berlin and here in Brasilia at any time. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much. That would be wonderful. Liriam, thank you so much for inviting me. And Christiana, I enjoyed our conversation a lot, and I really appreciate your work. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you, both of you, in Berlin or in Hamburg. My university is based. Otherwise, I come to Brazil, and I will not wait for the next Madonna concert to be there. Thank you so much.
Me too.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.